A 79-year-old woman robbed at gunpoint while bringing groceries into her home.
I know it's teenager guys that figure it's holiday time and they just want to rob people.
New tonight, she relives the terrifying encounter.
I'm going to die because of a gun in my head.
As Maryland faces a looming budget deficit, state lawmakers are pointing fingers about how we got here, what has them at odds. A substitute teacher accused of abandoning students, but she says she never taught at that school. While barred from teaching there, others continued to employ her.
Why would they let you teach in another school?
That's the million-dollar question.
Fox 45 News Project Baltimore investigates. A man who lost his home to a sinkhole gets an offer from the city, but it is not what he expected.
It was just so low, it didn't even feel like an offer.
Why he says the city is adding insult to injury.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary Bubala. Kaya's off tonight. An East Baltimore resident recounts a chilling encounter as she was trying to take her groceries inside her home this weekend.
One came to my front and had here a gun. And the other two, with the two bags I had, took it from me.
The 79-year-old woman's story, one of several painting a picture of growing frustration surrounding young people and crime, from assaults to armed robberies to carjackings. Fox 45's Keith Daniels joins us live with this woman's message following this traumatic experience. Keith, I can't believe they took her groceries.
Took her groceries, Mary's, and socks and a hat, too. Now, fortunately, no one was physically hurt in this incident, but tonight, for the woman involved, frightening moments. In East Baltimore, for Miss Trudy, a day of shopping.
Where's the money? Where's the money? Where's the money? Well, I started to get nervous one time.
Turned into an evening nightmare.
One came to my front and had here a gun. And the other two, with the two bags I had, took it from me.
The 79-year-old woman details what police are calling an armed robbery. She had just arrived at her home on Raymond Avenue near Sinclair Lane at about 6 o'clock Saturday night. She was walking to her front door when she says she noticed three individuals, maybe 15, 16 years old, across the street. When suddenly,
they ran across the road and just surrounded me around. Where's the money? Where's the money? Where's the money? Where's the money? One came to my front and had here a gun.
Miss Trudy, with one thought running across her mind.
I'm going to die because of a gun in my head. And the other two guys was around me.
The young suspects demanded money, but she had left her purse in the car. She was holding two shopping bags.
do not have an adequate explanation. State Senator Corey McRae, who represents the Bel Air Edison neighborhood, getting involved as well, forwarding the issues to Monzi. In a statement Monday, LifeBridge says all bills have been paid and new procedures are now in place to ensure timely payment.
This could put the program at a higher risk for waste, fraud, and abuse.
Taxpayer watchdog David Williams argues not paying rent on time could end up costing the taxpayers in Baltimore more money, and the apparent lack of organization should raise questions inside City Hall.
It's a real problem for LifeBridge, for Safe Streets, but ultimately for the taxpayer. This should be a red flag for the mayor, for the program, and moving forward, this may mean that LifeBridge shouldn't be getting these funds anymore. This is why an audit is needed at every level of this program.
Just days after news of the FBI investigation, on Sunday, October 29th, Senator McRae asked for a meeting with the mayor's office to get an update on the Bel Air Edison site. But it wasn't just the lawmaker looking for information. Catholic Charities, the other nonprofit running Safe Streets locations, asked Monsey for an update on the Bel Air Edison site, too. Internal communications from Monsey staffers show City Hall working to figure out what was going on after the FBI came knocking. Minutes after the news first broke, a spokesperson for the city agency sent a chat providing a draft statement to the public. That draft redacted in these documents. Later, discussion about how the city would respond to Fox 45's questions and confirmation 2 Safe Streets employees had the FBI show up at their homes as well. One of those people we know is David Caldwell. Caldwell was the site supervisor, now facing state-level ammunition charges after law enforcement found live rounds in his home during the search warrant. Caldwell is now on unpaid leave while his legal battle unfolds, and the Bel Air Edison Safe Street site remains inactive, with no timeline for it to reopen. In Baltimore, Mackenzie Frost, Fox 45 News.
Mackenzie reached out to Senator McCray to see if he ever met with Monsey about the Bel Air Edison Safe Street site. He says he did meet with Monsey last month and will continue to focus on the tangible goals set towards a successful Bel Air Edison site. The Bel Air Edison Safe Street site has been shut down since the FBI search. Fox 45 News looking into the impact the closure is having. Police data shows there have been 3 homicides in the Safe Streets zone last year and 6 non-fatal shootings. There have been no shootings since the search, indicating crime in the area has actually dropped, even with the branch closed. And that leads us to our question of the day. Do you think the Safe Streets program makes Baltimore safer? So far, 97% of people who voted say no. You can head to foxbaltimore.com/vote to weigh in. Renewed finger-pointing over the state's financial situation as a $5 billion budget surplus has started to slip away in just under a year since Governor Wes Moore took office. Republicans and Democrats blaming each other as the deficit looms. Fox 45's Jeff Abel joins us live with the debate on all of this. Jeff?
Well, analysts are warning that this state is spending far more money than it is taking in, and you can bet there's plenty of blame to go around.
When state transportation officials announced a $3 billion budget shortfall last week,
What? Wait a minute. No.
many longtime public transit riders came to one cold conclusion.
The MTA is at a crisis, I think.
In fact, it appears the state of Maryland is in a crisis. In a speech to county administrators last week, Governor Wes Moore delivered the grim news, saying our budget problem started long before I took office. Of the last 20 state budgets, 17 needed cuts to stay balanced. We might not have caused the problem, but we will address the problem.
Governor Larry Hogan, thanks so much.
It's great to be with you.
It was a far different prognosis from the one outgoing Governor Larry Hogan announced just before leaving office a year ago.
I inherited the worst financial situation the state had ever been in, and now I'm turning it over to Governor-elect Moore in the best shape it's ever been in.
It's always easier to blame the guy before you.
I think blaming this on the Governor Hogan's administration is probably the most inaccurate kind of excuse you can come up with.
The fact is, both governors may be correct. During Governor Hogan's tenure, the state received billions in federal COVID dollars, which aided in the state's recovery. But as Governor Moore told county administrators last week, extra money in the short term could pad the budget, but extra money in the short term never fixed the budget. It was a mirage. Now we're forced to reckon with structural challenges that have plagued our state for years. But as those federal funds disappear, Governor Moore has hardly put the brakes on spending. At the Department of Natural Resources, the budget has ballooned 121%. The State Treasurer's Department saw a budget increase of 112%, and the Comptroller's Office 19%.
The analyst said Maryland has a spending problem. They spend more than they bring in. So that deficit is going to be a fiscal cliff if they don't rein in spending.
It's not as if we don't have the money to spend here. What you need is just a little bit of fiscal responsibility. And I think these excuses that you're seeing are an indication that they don't want to do that. They don't want to question their priorities. They just want to raise taxes.
Well, that budget gap is expected to grow so large that analysts predict it'll take a 30% hike in the sales tax in order to close it. We're live tonight. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
That's why we're here tonight. to talk about not just investing downtown, but making historic investments in all of our neighborhoods and solve the vacant housing crisis in Baltimore for once and for all.
Mayor Brandon Scott and his housing partners announced historic investments to end the city's vacant home problem. The 15-year plan carries a $3 billion price tag and seeks to address the city's more than 13,000 vacant homes in that time. Now, the mayor says $3 million will come from the city. Baltimore has already invested $7 to $8 million a year to address vacant properties. The mayor says Baltimore will work with the Greater Baltimore Committee and build to come up with the money. The mayor already asking for donations for the plan. The city will also use TIF bonds. That's when a city designates a geographic area to be redeveloped. When that redevelopment happens, property values usually go up, and so do property taxes. Some of the money from the increased property taxes will go to fund the development in the district. TIF bonds have been used in Baltimore City before in high-profile development projects like Harbor East and recently Harbor Point. Finally, the mayor says he will be asking the state of Maryland to contribute $900 million in funding over the course of the 15-year plan. But as you heard, the state is facing that massive deficit, and some say Maryland won't have the money to give to the city.
I think this is going to be a monumental challenge for the city to go down to Annapolis, with their hat open in their hand and saying, we need hundreds of millions of dollars to solve our vacant housing problem.
Well, there are also questions about why this plan is just coming out now, as vacant homes have been a problem in the city for decades. Tonight's announcement comes nearly 2 years after 3 firefighters were killed battling a fire in a vacant house on Stricker Street. Many called for the city to do more to address the problem then. Some critics say it all comes down to election year politics and doesn't address a key issue, Baltimore's high property taxes.
The mayor's up for re-election here in just, a little less than a year. So it's a big, it's a bold, it's ambitious plan. But there again, where does the funding come from? The necessary condition is you have to have a competitive property tax rate. Right now, the tax rate, which is twice that of any jurisdiction in the state, is just so punitive to capital. And so that's great if you want to put these investments, insure and get rid of the blight and the vacant properties. But at the end of the day, the homeowner or investor, you still have a property tax rate that is so punitive that it's an investment repellent.
Fox 45 News will continue to follow your tax dollars and this new plan from the mayor. You can follow along both on air and online at foxbaltimore.com. Parts of our area waking up to a blanket of white this morning. Were you surprised when you looked out your window from Owings Mills to Westminster? We want to thank those of you who chimed in with your photos and videos of the overnight snowfall. Meteorologist Wyatt Everhart here with a look at the rest of the week for us.
Hey, Mary. Yeah, ending basically a 2-year snow drought with that accumulation this morning. A lot of it didn't melt off today, but it was so cool to see the kids out sledding early this morning, some of them anyway. That system continues to move further out to sea, and behind it, just some chilly winds all day, right? Blustery conditions. We'll keep it dry as winds diminish tonight. Closest snow shower is up toward Montreal, lake effect action there. But just keep in mind, this is an average first snow of the season on the 10th of December, kind of coming in right on schedule. It's been between October and February in the past, and of course, none last year. Cold tonight. We'll talk about a sunny stretch for the week ahead coming up.
Wyatt, thank you. Coming up on Fox 45 News at 10. 1 year after a sinkhole swallowed homes in North Baltimore, the city offering homeowners some financial relief, but it is falling flat. Why one homeowner says the offer adds insult to injury. Baltimore County Police say one resident took matters into their own hands when somebody broke into their home with a gun. What we know about this burglary turned homicide investigation. A Baltimore County substitute teacher says she was falsely accused of misconduct. Now her story is raising more questions about how the school system screens their subs. Project Baltimore takes a closer look right after the break. If a substitute teacher is accused of misconduct and puts student safety in jeopardy, should that teacher keep their job? As Project Baltimore's Chris Papps has learned in Baltimore County, the answer is yes, as long as that teacher goes to another school.
What's the bigger picture here? You think there could be more people like you?
Absolutely. I think Baltimore County Schools needs to look at how they're handling their substitute teachers.
Jen Reedholm hopes her 6-year fight with Baltimore County Public Schools is nearly over. Since 2017, she's been trying to get her name removed from the Do Not Use Substitute Teacher list at Warren Elementary. BCPS says in 2017, she left a class unattended, which was unsafe for students. Reedholm says that's not true.
I want my record cleared and I want to be removed off the do not use list.
Her own employment records with BCPS do not show Reedholm ever working at Warren Elementary.
Nope, I've never substituted at Warren Elementary.
Since Project Baltimore first told Reedholm's story last week, she reached out to BCPS and received this reply saying the district is reviewing all the facts. But being on the do not use list is only half her story. If you take a closer look at Reedholm's employment records, you'll see, despite being on Warren's do not use list, she's been getting work.
Bay Chapel, Stoneleigh, Pinewood, I was at a few times.
Since 2017, she's taught at 8 county elementary schools.
Mostly Carroll Manor now.
Think about that for a minute. Reedholm was accused of putting students in danger at Warren Elementary. She was banned from teaching here, so she just went to other county schools and kept working. Reedholm told Project Baltimore the other schools didn't know because principals do not have access to the do not use list from other schools.
If you did something in one school and that school determined that you should not be teaching, why would they let you teach in another school?
That's the million-dollar question.
Baltimore County Schools told FOX45 in a statement that schools have the autonomy to determine which substitutes best meet the need of their programs and students. And a substitute can appear on 3 do not use lists before they can no longer work in BCPS. The exception to that rule is when substitute teachers are suspected of child abuse, in which case they are barred from all schools. Reedholm was not accused of child abuse, which is why she could keep teaching.
Baltimore County Schools allows you to mess up in 3 different schools before you're fired. So if you're on 3 do not use lists, then you are excused. You cannot have a job in Baltimore County anymore.
But this would not happen in Anne Arundel County Public Schools. If a teacher is barred from teaching in one school, they are barred from teaching in all schools. But other local school systems follow BCPS. Harford and Howard County schools also have do not use lists for substitute teachers, but they can still teach at other schools unless they are accused of physical or sexual abuse. In that case, the substitute would no longer be allowed to teach. But remember, Baltimore County Schools said in this 2022 letter to Reedholm that it was concerned for the safety of students due to her alleged actions. Yet she was still allowed to work in other schools.
I'm always saying, make it make sense, because it never does.
Project Baltimore will continue to follow this story as Reedholm works to clear her name in Baltimore County Public Schools. I'm Chris Papps, and this is Project Baltimore.
Coming up, a Baltimore County councilman walks back some of his proposed amendments that could limit the inspector general's power. Why the IG says this change isn't enough.
I'm Wyatt Everhart. A clear day and a windy one at that. The wind gusts thankfully diminishing at this hour. And so we're getting set for a very cold night out there, but the wind chill factor at least beginning to let up. We'll talk about how things trend through the midweek. Will the wintry chill hold tough? We'll let you know.
Oh boy, if you're out and about in Towson tonight, hopefully you are bundled up because it's cold out there. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Baltimore County Council Chairman Julian Jones is partially walking back his proposed amendments to a bill that would limit the powers of the county's inspector general. His decision comes after stiff pushback from IGs statewide, and this interaction with Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor last week.
This advisory board would not have any authority over the Office of Inspector General?
They would have to. In the amendment, it said that she would have to get approval from them before she publishes any reports.
I'm not sure. I would have to look at that one. Maybe you're right.
The advisory board Councilman Jones was proposing would consist of mostly county officials, the very people the inspector general is supposed to be investigating for waste, fraud, and abuse. Jones is now proposing a board of mostly private citizens with one county official from the Ethics Commission. But Inspector General Kelly Madigan says that isn't enough.
Frankly, Ms. Pryor, it's not about what I think. It's about what all of the other subject matter experts and other inspector generals testified to before the Blue Ribbon Commission. That is not a best practice, and the commission recognized that, and that's why they didn't propose it.
Madigan isn't alone in her frustration. Today, the Association of Inspectors General condemned the amendment, saying they'd restrict the office's ability to be effective and independent. There will be a public hearing on the amendments tomorrow. Stay with Fox 45 News for complete coverage.
I try to do everything the right way, and then something like this happened.
Residents outraged as they try to collect compensation for homes destroyed in a sinkhole. Why they argue the city is trying to rip them off.
The death toll in Gaza reaching 18,000. I'm Atra El-Nashar with how the White House is shifting its message on how Israel should proceed.
We are following three big stories. President Biden facing backlash over his stance on the Israel-Hamas war, why lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are frustrated with the president's rhetoric. Baltimore County police say an Essex man killed an intruder attempting to break into his home. Fox 45 asks whether they'll be pressing charges against the homeowner. And after months of complaints about sinkholes in North Baltimore, residents argue the city is shortchanging them on the value of their homes. And we begin there. Fox 45 News learning the city made offers to some of the people who filed lawsuits after losing their homes. Rebecca Pryor looks into why the bottom line isn't matching their expectations.
It's the day these residents have been desperate for. The city finally agreeing to reimburse them for their losses. But that excitement quickly fading once they saw the dollar amount being offered.
I miss it a lot. I miss it a whole lot.
This empty lot is where just about everything Quentin Bell owned once stood.
This would have been the living room.
Now, Bell stands alone.
Then the closet, bathroom, and then the kitchen.
Paying a mortgage on a home that no longer exists.
You might think I'm joking, but I'm not.
Our cameras have followed along, capturing the collapse and changes to Bell's property, from a 3-story row home to a construction zone, to a patch of dirt, to a plot of weeds, to today's muddy mess.
It doesn't make sense.
More than a year has passed since a 115-year-old stone arch storm drain crumbled beneath the ground, causing a massive sinkhole, forcing the demolition of this entire row of homes.
This house was a 3-story house, and I'm not including the basement.
And yet, when it comes to compensation,
pretty big row home.
Bell still hasn't been provided a penny.
All this pain and suffering that me and my neighbors doing, they should pay us whatever our house worth and plus more.
Not from his insurance, who found the city's failing infrastructure at fault.
That moment right there was one of the crushing moments out of the whole thing.
And not from the city, who claimed residents should have given notice of the defect.
Which we couldn't do because, I can't see through the ground.
Out of options, Bell hiring a lawyer to sue the city, a lawsuit the city attempted to dismiss, then delay.
We get a trial date that was postponed.
Months later, the city refusing to hand over basic discovery, claiming simple requests, including records of the storm drain's needed repairs, all internal communication following the storm drain's collapse, and copies of the storm drain's inspection reports are unduly burdensome. This is a Fox 45 investigation revealing this century-old storm drain hadn't been inspected in over 2 decades.
They ain't do nothing. Just string us on, string us on, string us on.
And now, what should be a welcome surprise, only adding insult to injury.
It was just so low, it didn't even feel like an offer.
The city appraising Bell's home at $120,000 and offering to reimburse him $90,000 for his losses, far less than Bell was expecting.
My appraisal from my lawyer and the city appraisal is like this.
The appraisal from his lawyer claiming Bell's home was worth $315,000.
It's almost double what the city offered me. And it's just ridiculous.
Feeling abandoned, shortchanged, and strung along.
It don't compensate me at all.
Bell has just one question for the city.
How would they feel if they was in my shoes?
And one warning for fellow residents.
It could happen to anybody, and it could happen again.
Rebecca Pryor.
People should be worried. People should be worried.
Fox 45 News.
Fox 45 News has also heard concerns from residents surrounding skyrocketing water bills. One South Baltimore woman says the monthly bill for her 1-bedroom apartment ballooned to more than $15,000, enough water to fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Then there is frustration with the BGE conduit deal, which is expected to send customers' bills soaring by 5% each year over the next 3 years. BGE recently released an internal memo surrounding this deal, insisting the memo showed customers will benefit from the deal, but the memo didn't provide a cost analysis, which is why city leaders are saying it's important for the utility company to be transparent.
Look, that would cost taxpayers over $600 million over the next 3 years. I remain deeply concerned about the conduit deal, and my message to the Public Service Commission is they made the right call enforcing public transparency.
The full 11-page memo available at foxbaltimore.com, along with all our reporting on the conduit deal. Baltimore County Police are investigating a deadly encounter in Essex, which a homeowner shot an intruder trying to break in on Saturday night. Fox 45's Amy Simpson shares what we've learned about the case so far.
Neighbors declining to speak on camera today, but telling us the house where this happened. That man is new to the neighborhood just within the last few months. Eastern Baltimore County. 9:45 Saturday night.
1020 Middlesex Road. Caller says somebody tried to break in. Her son's inside. He's paralyzed.
Police radio communications relaying a 911 call to this block of Middlesex Road in Essex.
I think what they're trying to tell me is that he shot at the alleged burglar in defense.
Less than a minute later, more comms to officers en route.
Paralyzed son inside the location says he shot at an attempted burglary suspect.
And within 5 minutes of that initial dispatch,
I got one down with a gunshot wound.
officers appearing to relay back what they found when they arrived on scene.
Middlesex, gunshot wound to the face.
According to Baltimore County Police, 35-year-old Gerard Pryor was pronounced dead at the scene after being shot several times. Detectives believe Pryor was armed, trying to break into the home when the homeowner fired their own weapon. Right now, police not identifying that homeowner. But today we asked if charges are pending against them. The department only willing to say the case is still under investigation. But they do consider this a homicide, asking anyone to come forward with information or surveillance. Today, I also asked Baltimore County State's Attorney Scott Schellenberger if he anticipates charges will be filed against this homeowner. Schellenberger telling me he'll review the case once this investigation is complete, but no decisions will be made until all evidence is reviewed. In Essex, Amy Simpson, Fox 45 News.
Maryland law allows a homeowner to stand their ground and attempt to defend themselves against an intruder inside their home. But our state also has a duty to retreat law. If a person is defending themselves outside of their home, they must retreat. New reports from the Middle East claiming Hamas leaders are threatening to kill Israeli hostages unless there's another exchange. This comes as the Israeli military has reportedly been rounding up hundreds of Palestinian men around Gaza City. Families across the region sharing their fears that loved ones may not return home.
My son is a strong guy. He's not somebody that will break fast. But still, it's 2 months underground.
Can you believe that the Red Cross is not allowed to see them, to see if they're alive? We don't know if they torture them. We don't know if they're breaking them.
Well, this week, the United Nations will resume an emergency session on the Israel-Hamas war, aiming to agree on recommendations for bringing peace to the region. And those concerns coming as President Biden is facing questions about his stance on the war. National correspondent Audra El-Nashar has the backlash on Capitol Hill.
International and domestic political pressure is building on the White House to distance itself from Israel and protect civilian lives in Gaza. As of Monday, about 18,000 people have been killed in Gaza since the October 7th Hamas attacks in Israel. 70% of them, roughly 12,600, are women and children. Another 49,000 have been injured. Those figures, cited by the United Nations, come from the Palestinian Ministry of Health under the Hamas-run government.
Look, none of this is our fault. We are already crushed and oppressed.
The White House has avoided direct criticism of Israel, saying they're in touch on ways to avoid civilian casualties.
Israel should be allowed to defend itself against a terrorist organization.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken made one of his bluntest comments on the matter Sunday morning.
We think there needs to be a premium put on protecting civilians. The intent is there, but the results are not always manifesting themselves.
This follows backlash from the U.S. vetoing a UN resolution Friday demanding a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza and immediate release of hostages, in part because it did not include a condemnation of Hamas. The veto broke with allies France and Japan. Here at home, President Biden's handling of the conflict appears to be hurting him politically. A recent Pew Research poll found only 1/3 of adults approve of his response to the Israel-Hamas war. And when it comes to voters younger than 30, 46% disapprove. The president's response has been generally consistent with long-standing U.S. policy supporting Israel and in line with most of Congress. But 21% say he's favoring Israelis too much.
No more money for Israel slaughter!
And 16% say he's favoring Palestinians too much.
Are you ready to stand for Israel today?
A decades-long conflict coming to a head over 2 deadly months of war, with U.S. leadership playing an outsized role in where it goes from here. In Washington, I'm Atrel Nishar reporting.
And that brings us to our national question of the day. Do you support sending military aid to Israel in its battle against Hamas? 72% of those who voted say yes. To weigh in, you can head to foxbaltimore.com/vote. Click on the Pulse tab.
New questions surrounding Iran's attempts to influence American policy. I'm Kayla Gaskins in Washington with that story straight ahead.